is the Schaefer Baseball Report, an inside look at America's pastime. From Little League all the way to the big leagues. Now here's your hosts, former Major League infielder Jeff Schaefer and Tommy the V. Viola.
All right, we want to welcome everybody again to podcast number 30 of the Schaefer Baseball Report. We got, of course, Andrew One Tool Zike. You haven't even questioned that one yet, have you, Dusty? And then we have Philadelphia Phillies, good friend and father of Huck, who's in our is in our organization, Dusty Wathan, now third base coach of the Philadelphia Phillies, which been an interesting journey for you, Dusty. I mean, you know, one of the things that I wanted to bring up, it's important to us and it's important to the listeners, is that you're a dad that spent a lifetime in pro ball. I mean, your whole life has been in the game, other than a little bit of JUCO here and there. But you know, you're obviously your father is a World Series catcher, and you know, now the you know, your life has just been nothing but, you know, spring trainings and long seasons, and now you have two boys, Huck and Gus, that are involved in youth and travel showcase baseball. So from the outside, in terms of a parent, it looks different than it would look from somebody that spent a lifetime in pro ball and now trying to figure out, you know, what is the path of my kid. Yeah,
I mean, definitely, it's a lot different. I think. You know, obviously when I was growing up, it was American Legion ball, and you did that, and maybe a couple of schools called you, and you ended up, you know, I ended up going to junior college in California, luckily, and was able to sign. But I think now it's there's so much panic in people. I think people want to say, where's my kid going to go to school? And, you know, thankfully I got you guys to kind of lean on, because I don't really know much about it. But I think if you look at guys that get to professional baseball, there's so many avenues to get there. Junior college, Division II, Division III. You know, there's obviously some Division I guys out there, but I feel, talking to guys that I've been around that have played for me through the minor leagues and been, you know, in the big leagues, that there's just as many guys that are Division II or high school, out of high school, or junior college guys than there are Division I guys. So the way to get there is different, and everybody has their own way to get there. And I think the biggest thing for me that I've seen, especially like in my son and talking to people that have just gotten out of college, some guys that are playing in pro ball, is to really find that avenue where you can play every single day. I think that's the biggest thing. The only way you get better at this game and enjoy it is to play. I mean, nobody wants to sit on the bench at any level. Well, maybe in the big leagues.
Right.
Maybe
exactly.
In the big leagues. But
I get off the bench on the 1st and the 15th to get my check.
Exactly. But not even in the big leagues, those guys want to sit on the bench. But, you know, it's a little bit easier to sit on the bench there. But I think that's the biggest thing, is find a place to play. And I think that's what we're looking for right now in my kids individually.
So, you know, obviously your dad's had a great career. You had a very long career. Now your career is taking a different path in terms from player to coach to manager. You move through the systems now. You know, you were the second in line for the managerial job with the Philadelphia Phillies. They gave it to Gabe. You know, obviously a front office decision on, you know, based on a lot of different things. But you're there. You're in the third base box. Your life in the game, would you wish that on your kid?
Yeah, I mean, it's all I know. I mean, I think it's not easy sometimes, but you know, it's all I know. It's what I saw growing up. I think people ask, you know, what was it like? Oh, is it so special having a dad as a Major League Baseball player? And I said, well, I didn't know any better. I mean, I mean, this is just what we did every day. You know, we went to the ballpark, we hung out. Dad went on the road for 7 days. He came back. You know, we had some lunch. He went to the ballpark. That's just how it was. And I think that's how my kids are. I mean, I've been in the game professionally since I was 20. My wife came in after I was already in professional baseball. We met. So this is all she's known, and this is all my kids know. So I think it's difficult at times, but, you know, it's been worth it. Going through the minor leagues for as many years I spent in the minor leagues, it barely pays the bills. But, you know, I enjoy it. And like they say, you know, you can't take the money with you. And also, you have to do something that you really, really enjoy, or why do it?
Well, it's interesting because you say you've been in a professional uniform since you're 20, but you've been in the game your whole life.
Right, yeah.
You really don't know anything else, do you?
No, not at all. I mean, I was born in Double-A Jacksonville. My dad was playing in Jacksonville, and in 1973, I was born August 22nd. A couple days later, he took me into the clubhouse right when I got out of the hospital in a catcher's glove, and here I am, 45 years later, still working with catchers and still have a catcher's glove on a lot of
You
days.
would have been like a social media like legend if that was back then. That your father walking in there in a catcher's glove. The path. We had this conversation yesterday. There's so many different. You hear so many different things from so many different people. You hear about East Coast Pro. You hear about the area code games. You hear about World Wood Bat stuff. You hear all about all these different things. And it throws people into a panic, right? So one of the questions would be is, you have a Renaissance kid in Huck. He's more than just a baseball guy. He's a bright kid and probably has ideas of other things in life other than just this, although this may be priority, right?
Yeah.
How do you try to navigate that path? How do you what if you had to choose the path for your son, and obviously we know life takes its own direction for most of us, right? But if you had to choose that path for your son, as a pro guy, what would be the best path?
College. To me, the college experience, the maturity of college, of kids growing up, very few kids are ready to go away from home all on their own. When you go to professional baseball, you're on your own. It's here you go, here's your paycheck, figure out a place to stay. Maybe you go to extended spring, so they put you in a hotel. But it's, when you're away from the ballpark, you're away from the ballpark. Yeah, they check curfew here and there, but no one's looking out for you very much. You're on your own. So it's a really difficult path out of high school. But on the flip side, I really want him to go to college, and the reason being is even if you get 2-3 years of education, you're that much closer. It's a really difficult path. I think if you go 5-6 years professional baseball, you walk out of high school, you're 25 years old and you have no college education. To start your college education, maybe you graduate by the time you're 30. Now you're in the workforce at 30 years old with really no experience. So I think it's difficult. But I think the experience, what college does for you, I think it's just a special place. No matter what level that's at, I think, it's something that I want him to do. Now, we're talking if there's life-changing money involved and you see some of these guys in the first round, high school kids in the first round, where it's life-changing money and you can set aside $3 or $4 million, which most of us won't make in our entire life, really. Then we'll figure out college later, I think. But, unless it's life-changing money, I would really highly recommend, and this coming from a pro guy that Major League Baseball probably kill me, but I would rather guys go to college. And honestly, if you're going to be that good and you're going to be good enough to play in professional baseball, they'll be back in 2 years or 3 years to sign you again, and you'll be that much stronger and more mature. I think we see that a lot of the college guys, especially the higher end draft picks, that they come out of college and they're men. They're 21 years old and they're put together.
A couple things in that scenario. One is I'm a pro baseball background. Obviously, I loved my time there. Same as you. I think you did 14 years. I did 14 years. Is that when you get drafted, especially as a high school kid, I don't think it's necessarily ever presented to them like how difficult it really is, because in the mind of a 17, 18-year-old kid who's going to get drafted, he thinks he's a big leaguer. Like, look at me, look at everything I've done, because you've been a superstar your whole life and everybody's kind of looked at you and like, you're great. And, all of a sudden you step into that environment, with 18-year-old kids, and on that team you got 21, 22, 23-year-old guys, right? Some salty vets coaching. And the lifestyle it completely changes on you. So now you have to try to adjust socially to older kids that have been seasoned through college, right? And that, and again, you're given X amount of dollars. You got to take care of yourself. You got to get to the park. You got to make sure you train. There's a lot of responsibility put on a kid. That's one. Number two is going to college. And especially if you're going to a Power 5 or you're going to a D1 or look, we know there's some powerhouses down here as far as Division IIs go, right? So you're talking about D2, D1 baseball. There's a lot of guys drafted along the way, and JUCOs get a scarlet letter when they really shouldn't, especially on this side of the country. But those kids come out playing a higher level of competition and have a faster track to the big leagues, not only physically but socially.
Yeah, absolutely. I think these universities, they really prepare guys well. I think, a lot of them have, TV, a lot of them have radio. They're doing stuff around campus. There's just a lot of stuff. You got to go to school still, so there's the maturity aspect of that where, hey, you got responsibilities other than playing baseball. You go to pro ball, it's baseball, 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 and they don't care if you get any education, really. The other thing that goes along with that is the melting pot of guys that you're thrown into at 18 years old. You're talking about Latin guys. You're talking about maybe some Asian guys. You're talking about guys from all over the country. So, there's a lot of guys speaking Spanish, and it's really a crazy thing. And most guys don't realize what rookie ball is. Rookie ball is probably the playing surface is nicer than most, but the actual field is not as nice as your local high school probably. I mean, it's a chain link fence. It's a bench in the actual bench in the dugouts, and maybe a covering over the dugout, and that's where you're going to play. And if you think you're going to play in front of 100 fans, you're crazy. I mean, unless there's guys, families there or something like that, there'll be 5-8 people there watching you play. So it's definitely a grind. I went through extended spring after junior college, and it's definitely a grind. It's tough to be in there. You're not going to Charlotte and playing at Knight Stadium, or you're not going to one of these beautiful AA parks that are all built now. You're going to where no one's coming to watch you play, and no one really cares, and they're looking for the next guy.
I signed with the Orioles originally and went to the University of Maryland, which was an ACC school. And back then, I mean, it was a nice program. We had nice new uniforms. We traveled right. We stayed in decent hotels. We did all that. And I get signed by the Orioles, and I'm assigned to Bluefield, West Virginia. And I'll take a puddle jumper in there that's knuckleballing in. The lady in front of me is throwing up. I'm on a plane with another who was a scout with Milwaukee and is probably going to be back in the game pretty soon, is Jim Rooney. He's on the plane with me. So there's two Northeast guys going into Bluefield, West Virginia on a plane that had 4 seats, and the lady getting sick all over the place in front of us. Get there. It's, the setting is beautiful. It's in the mountains, but you look at the facility. When it rained, we had to put all our equipment up on top of the lockers because water rushed in and flooded the locker room. So it smelled like rank rain. It was horrible. And then they didn't have a uniform that fit me. That's how small I was when I signed. So I ended up wearing the Bat Boys pants. I had to ask for the Bat Boys pants because everything was too big. But it is an interesting process, and we deal with these families all the time. You brought up a word that we haven't used in here, but we would use it kind of like you're scholarship driven. Everybody's over there, but there is a panic. There's definitely a panic in these people about where their kids are going to go to school and how they're going to go to school, and then there's also delusion. In terms of how good their kid really is. It really is. It's a grind in terms of communication with the families, and the other part of it is the sensitivity of being a parent. Going, you know what? I don't care what you think or what you say. I mean, we've been doing this a lifetime. We see this over and over and over again. And I tell the families in our building, like I've seen it at the highest levels. I've played with Hall of Famers. I've played against Hall of Famers. You see them day in, day out. You see animals come through that maybe not be the best talent along the way, but have that look in their eye that they're just not going to be beat, and they're going to grind their way. But it's not college as far as baseball goes is not you're not entitled to it. You have to earn it. And so some of these guys that come through the system, right? They sign out of college and all that, and they have all the talent in the world, but they don't have the mental side of it. Let me ask you this: do the Latin players coming out of a situation that is life or death have more of a mental toughness than most kids coming out of the United States?
Well, before I answer that, I want to say something about the college situation and stuff. And you and I have talked about this before, but I have to ask you where Huck stands, because I'm not at the level where you are to be able to see those kids every day where he stacks up. So I think that's important for people to know, because I don't even know where my own kid stacks up. So, I think to leave it to you guys a little bit to have the conversations with you guys that are out there every day and see everybody, not just who your son plays against that weekend, to see the kids that, in different states all the way up the coast and all these tournaments. I think that's important for them to trust you, trust the guys that are out there that are going to put these kids in the right location as far as colleges and junior colleges and where the right direction is. But to your question, I think the Latin players, they have it so difficult. You can't imagine what some of these guys go through. I mean, they're essentially taken out of their homes a lot of times at 13, 14 years old, and people recognize that they can really play. They send them to an academy, quote unquote academy, and these guys take care of them. They're called buscones. They're like low level agents, and they feed them, they house them.
And not in nice houses either.
No. Like I mean, if they have running water, that's a great thing. Probably porta potty, and they just go out and play baseball every day. No education, zero education. They don't care about that because what's going to happen is at 16 years old, they're eligible to sign July 2nd of their 16 a year. They're eligible to sign, and that Buscone is going to take about 30% of his salary. Mm-hmm. And the only reason it's legal still is because what they're saying is this guy paid for this kid to live for X amount of years. And, he might have 10, 20, 40 guys at his place. A couple handful might pan out to be $100,000 guys. Maybe he gets lucky and gets a $1 million guy. So the guy's got to live too. And it's a lot of work for those guys. But, what those kids have come from once they get to the United States, because most of them will go to our Dominican Academy, which is a beautiful place now. It's unbelievable. It's 1 year old. But they got meals and education there. We actually educate. Mm-hmm. We have a program that educates our Latin players up through 8th
Sounds
grade.
Like UDACF.
Yeah, up through 8th grade, which is equivalent, basically, a high school diploma in the Dominican Republic. So
8th grade is basically a high school diploma.
Yeah, pretty much down there. I mean, if you get through 8th grade, you're going to be all right down there. Which is it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool program.
I'd be like really rich.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool program that it's really grown for us. This is a funny story. I had a kid that played for me years ago when I first started coaching, who is now a pitching coach in the Dominican Republic, go through the program as a coach, and he got his high school equivalent down there in Dominican through our program.
8th grade.
Yeah, of 8th grade, and he's 30-something years old, and he only did it. He has a baseball job, obviously, but He has a son, and he wanted him to see that he went and got his education. So it's pretty neat. But once these guys get to the United States, we have the problem sometimes with them that they think they made it. I mean, it's so bad in the Dominican Republic. They come over here, they're staying in a hotel with air conditioning, it's got windows, it's got doors. They go to the ballpark, they get food, they're getting paid, and most of their money is going back to the Dominican Republic. Right. They might be making $850 a month, and most of it is going back to support the rest of their family. So a lot of times, a lot of guys at that low level, they think they made it. And it's difficult to push them through sometimes and say, you know what, you haven't made it yet. Because, as hard as it is to fathom a guy making $10 million a year for a kid that grows up in the States, I mean, that's unbelievable what happens, in Dominican Republic or Venezuela. Because I think, personally, part of the problem with some young Latin players in the major leagues is that, if we give them a big contract up front, maybe they don't have the desire as much. And that goes for, anybody. So you have to pick the right guy to give the contract to. Now, that doesn't go for everybody, but I can definitely imagine growing up with absolutely nothing. Somebody gives you a contract for $10 million for 3 years, and you're like, I'm good for the rest of my life. I don't have to do anything.
So now these kids that get this money, they got another issue, too, because once they get this money, I mean, there's so much crime and stuff down there that you got to worry, like people get kidnapped. Moms are getting kidnapped, families get kidnapped, threatened lives and stuff like that. So, you have to look to protect that as well.
Yeah, I personally know quite a handful of guys, I should say, that have been kidnapped and stuff, and ended up being okay, thank goodness. But it happens, especially in Venezuela. Venezuela is in a bad situation right now. So there's a lot of guys. Most of those guys, once they earn enough money, they move over here to the States, live in Tampa or down in Miami or somewhere like that as soon as they can get out of
Philadelphia still has a presence in Venezuela.
Yes, we do. We're actually one of only 4, I believe, teams that have an academy in Venezuela. There's no longer a summer league, like there's a Dominican summer league. There's no more Venezuelan summer league, but we rent an academy in Valencia, Venezuela, and we run an academy there. And then once the Dominican summer league starts, which is in May, we send all our Venezuelan players over to the Dominican. We have 2 teams in the Dominican Republic, and that's where all our guys play for the summer.
So I guess the word out to the moms that listen, or the families that are listening to these kids that think that want their kids to sign pro ball, their kids want to sign and go into pro ball. Like this is more than just going and playing baseball and competing against, like talent.
Yeah, it's definitely eye-opening for a lot of kids. A lot of kids just can't handle it. The competition is crazy. It's day in, day out. It's every single day. It's a difficult process. I think not many people realize what it takes. I think one good example is say a kid in high school, you go back and look and say, okay, on your T-ball team, how many kids ended up, going and playing in the coach pitch or the machine pitch? And then you're like, okay, most of them did, 90%. Some will quit, go to soccer. The kids that can't hit will go play lacrosse. Then from there, how many kids get through 12 years old and they go to the big field? Well, you got your handful of kids that are going to go on to the big field, and then the other handful are going to quit. And then you get through, kind of some travel ball and stuff. Next thing you know, you look around, there's a couple more kids gone, your high school team. By the senior year, you're like, those 10 kids we started with our senior year, only 4 of them are playing now on the high school team because the other ones had other things going on. They didn't like it anymore, blah, blah, blah. Everybody, either it's an excuse or they're just more interested in something else. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, wow, for my high school team, I'm the only one playing in college. And the next thing you know, that starts over. Now you're like, okay, now how many guys in college are going to play? So I think it's an easy example to look at and say, like, it's so hard to get to professional baseball, but the drop off at every single level, we see it.
It's substantial.
I think it's huge, and people don't realize it.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into just maintaining a high school career at this time right now, because our showcase travel baseball world is one that's so competitive. Because baseball different than when we grew up. I mean, when it was basketball season, you were out playing basketball. It's football season, you were playing football. We might have thrown a little bit, or we might have hit a little bit in the off season, but we multi-sported it. Now it's everything is so specialized and everything is so scholarship driven with the panic involved, that if I take an off season off, if this is what my son is best at, is baseball, and he's not so good at football and he's not so good at basketball, but he could play, we're so scholarship driven that I got to keep him in a program all year long, that even moving kids on to the next level becomes difficult. Here's an interesting thing that I've seen in this process, because we are so specialized, is kids learn how to showcase, right? They learn how to go and show their skills and whatever. And it may impress a college coach enough that he goes, yeah, come this way. But the kid is not really that good. He doesn't take what he can showcase into a game and understand that, when you get to this level and guys are the same as you are across the dugout, in the other dugout, you're not going to be able to compete. Do you see that through draft too? Because we all miss people.
Yeah, absolutely. We see it all the time. I think, honestly, probably 8-9 years ago when I first started coaching in professional baseball, managers at lower levels had some of those guys. I thought showcase kids. I mean, they would swing in the same spot every time. Mm-hmm. If you threw it there, the guy was going to hit it 500 feet. I mean, impressive. We had a kid named Anthony Hewitt, tremendous athlete. Could have been a college running back. He was out of high school, the Northeast. He's from the city. Went to what do you call it, like a boarding school kind of thing in Connecticut. Signed at 19 because he went an extra year to high school. But I mean, this kid was 6'2", 230 pounds, could run like the wind, and hit a ball 500 feet and throw it about 99 miles an hour from the outfield. And if you threw him anything other than in one little tiny zone, he couldn't hit it at all. So he never made it out of A-ball. But I'm telling you, if you saw this kid in the showcase, I would have been like, I'll sign him in the first round too. And there's a number of those kids out there. There's a ton of them out there that can't make adjustments in their swings, that can't compete on the field. But if you let them go run a 60 or a 40 and have them throw from right field or throw from shortstop, take 3 ground balls and take some BP, it's quite impressive. And it's difficult for the scouts now to get through that sometimes, because there's not American Legion. There's not a team playing very often. It's showcase baseball. Right. It's 15 kids show up and let's go see who can hit it the farthest and throw it the hardest, and that's difficult for scouts. So our scouts, personally, I can speak for, is that they've done a tremendous job over the last 4 or 5 years especially of getting in the houses, of talking to players, talking to families, and making sure that the makeup is there. And you can kind of tell a lot about a player just from his parents, the way he's brought up, and the way he talks to you, and how he's going to compete. I think you just find out a lot about that.
You bring up scouts, right? I mean, a lot of organizations are changing, and they're using, and again, Philadelphia has a huge sabermetrics guy running the club in Gabe, coming out of the Dodgers organization that went to big sabermetric stuff. We keep hearing on certain levels that scouts are being eliminated on our level because they're going to start to go to video, which everybody uses video, which is okay. I get it. You can see, good baseball people can see certain things in any player. But you don't have enough data to determine what a good player is on statistics. I talk to our kids all the time. We go on the weekend, we play 4 games. You can go 10 for 20 and get fisted 10 times and not hit a ball out of the infield and beat it out, right? And then you're walking home going, I hit 500. And then those numbers translate out to somewhere, okay? But in reality, you got the kid that went, 2 for 20 and barreled up 10 balls or 15 balls, and it doesn't reflect. So, it just seems like every time you turn around, another scout that either we knew is getting dumped.
Well, I think, it's a difficult situation. A lot of organizations are going to young guys that, maybe don't have the dirt in their spikes like we were used to traditionally, if that's what you did afterwards. I can really only speak to our organization, what we do. We still have a big amateur scouting department. Actually, we just added to our amateur scouting department and added internationally too. A lot of organizations, though, are going to guys where they just take a video camera and video what's going on the field, and then somebody else later on kind of reads it and looks at it. And this guy's just trying to get out there. It's a young guy that they're not paying much money to, and he can just go out there and video everything and turn it in, basically,
right.
Where we do a little bit of video on that side of it, but most of it is our guys still writing reports, still watching players, word of mouth, bird dogs, all that stuff, and getting them out there. So that's a big part of it. And we are lucky in our organization. John Middleton, our owner, is willing to spend money on a lot of things, but we have a lot of professional scouts to where a lot of our amateur scouts versus professional scouts don't have to go back and forth and cover both things. They'll cover one thing or the other. So the pro scouts are only dealing with pro guys. They're only writing pro reports, and the amateur guys are only doing amateur stuff, and they might do some lower level, maybe cover like an instructional league or the end of a short season rookie ball league where kids are closer to the age that they're looking at. So, it is sad that it's going to the analytics side of it a little bit in the amateur scouting, but I think as we go forward, there's going to be things that are going to help with that analytics, and it won't be necessarily batting average and things like that. There's these machines now that are portable, that are going to get more portable, that'll end up being able to measure, exit velocity and spin rates and stuff like that. And we use them in bullpens and in the batting cage and stuff like that, some for development. But I think you're going to see a lot more of that because, honestly, I want a kid that the ball comes off his bat. Like you said, that kid might win 2 for 20, but I want the kid that has the exit velocity of 95 miles an hour. I don't want the kid that has the exit velocity of 85.
Right, but there's two sides to that, right? So if I take the devil's advocate to that, and that's like velocity, you got the kid that every time he throws a pitch, he looks for the radar gun. He looks for the number on the wall and wants to know, how hard am I throwing, but I didn't throw a strike, right? Then you got a guy that's got great exit velocity, like the kid that you were talking about that you guys drafted in the first round, the Hewitt kid, but yet he couldn't hit a slider, couldn't make adjustments at the plate, So there is analytics to it, right? There's definitely, and I'm not opposed to it. Like I got to say that I'm moving towards that direction. Being old school. I was watching the Red Sox game last night, and they hit and run, and they bunted early before they blew them out, before they run-ruled the Yankees, But, there's still that piece when you have that guy in the dugout that is allowed to, take the athlete and play baseball with him instead of just, okay, this guy's exit velocity is X, so I'm going to let him swing away because he may power one in the gap.
Well, I think that's what you're seeing right now. The teams that are having the most success and are going to have the most success going forward are the ones that are able to merge that together, are able to merge the feel for the game, what's going on right now, with the analytics. And I think probably one of the best ones in baseball right now is A.J. Hinch. I played with A.J. in the minor leagues, played with him a little bit in the big leagues. Very smart guy, Stanford, and played for a long time. And I think you're seeing it right now that he's really good at merging analytics and feel for the game. And they also have a bunch of good players too, but that's why they're having success there. I think Alex Cora is the same thing. I think he has a really good feel for the game, obviously played for a number of years, came from Houston, probably learned a little bit under AJ, maybe the analytics side of it, and is able to put things together a little bit. And I think you can't go all analytics and you can't go all what it was in the 1980s because nobody's going to steal 100 bases anymore. So
you, to a degree, still have a, to use a political term, a bipartisanship inside of baseball, though, where a lot of organizations are sticking on all analytics.
Well, I think,
not necessarily today, but when this sabermetrics first started to take away Moneyball, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. So Billy Beane goes Moneyball, and all of a sudden a lot of teams start to analyze him, like how is this guy having success in a small market, and bringing these guys in. They're really not big names, and making themselves playoff eligible just about every year, getting close, game or two out, whatever, right? So everybody starts to get on the sabermetric side, and we kept saying this all along. You can't dive all into that. You can't become push button. But again, so you have to hybrid it, and more guys that that understand and have a feel for the game. Because if you haven't played the game to a degree, it's really difficult to have a feel for the game to kind of get it. I mean, you've coached at every level and you've managed at every level.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the guys that are having success, the managers, the organizations that are having success. I think what jumps out at people is when an organization drastically upgrades their analytical department, which we did in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. We had 0. We went from 0 to we went from 1 guy in the analytics department to 12 full-time guys in 18 months. So people were like, you're all analytical. Well, we were just way behind, so we were trying to catch up still. So I don't think Gabe is, but Gabe also learned a lot this year through the year, and he'd tell you this, that you have to mesh it together a little bit. And early in the season, maybe he didn't do a great job of it, and he learned. But that's the great thing about Gabe is that he's a guy that is going to learn from his mistakes, take in all the information from everybody around him, criticism included, and make a good evaluation of the situation and make changes going forward. And so I think you see, Kevin Cash in Tampa. I think he's done a tremendous job too. Tampa was one of the first analytically driven clubs, quote unquote, from the very beginning, and he's done a tremendous job with them. I mean, where they win almost 90 games this year or something, and he's done a tremendous job as a catcher who played for a long time. You look at, like I said, Cora and a lot of these guys. You just still don't see the managers not coming from some kind of playing career. I think that's a big thing. You're seeing a lot more guys come straight from the field, almost straight from the field to managing. But I think they still played, and there's some analytical things. Yeah, there's some organizations that are sending the lineup down, but we're not doing that in Philadelphia. I can tell you that. The lineup doesn't come from anywhere other than that coach's room and Gabe.
You see guys coming out of the booth too, and and again, I think to a degree that's even a good training tool, because you sit back and you're watching game after game after game after game, and it, as a commentator, you got to go ahead and not only talk the game, talk the situation, but you got to anticipate. To keep people engaged, you got to. So there's an expectation of what's going to happen in the game. Somebody like Boone steps down, right, and gets a lineup like he does, and man, listen, they won 100 games, right? Boston's a scary looking club. I mean, that is an amazing looking baseball team, and I'm not a Boston fan whatsoever. A scary looking club. But you walk into a situation with the New York Yankees, and you have all these expectations. It's no different really in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a baseball town, right? It may not be the population of a New York City. It's right around the corner. What are the difference in the pressures from managing in the minor leagues? Not and who would have known? I mean, you were one phone call away from being the manager of the Philadelphia Phillies but going into the third base box, and especially getting off to the start that you guys got off to, and then things kind of changing a little bit. What's the pressure like in the amongst the coaches?
Well, I think I don't look at things as pressure. You have to look at reality and what's going to happen. So for myself at third base, as long as you're prepared, just as a player, you're going to make good decisions, and you're going to make some poor decisions at times. It's going to be it's part of the game. But as a third base coach, you have to know that you're going to be booed for stopping a guy, and you're going to be booed for sending a guy. Sometimes somebody's going to make an unbelievable play, throw a guy out where you should have sent him, 100% should have sent him. They can make a great play, he's out. And if you stop a guy and everybody thinks he should have scored, then you're going to get booed. So as soon as you get past that, but on the analytics side of coaching third base a little bit is there's so much information now that we have, along with video, along with velocity of arms, or how well a guy goes left to right. I actually get a thing every day, a report every day prior to the game that says the distance I should send a guy on a sac fly if he's standing still, going right, going back, going forward. And that's each outfielder compared to each runner in the lineup. So I have that information kind of as a general rule, but you also have to put into play, game situation. So I also get a post-mortem after a game on every guy, and this is coming from what I kind of helped build a little bit, or asked to help have built, is any first to home situation that I stop a guy at third or he scores, what the win probability was at that moment, if we send him or if we stop him, and what the probability of him scoring is at that moment, so that they match up right. So you can kind of second guess yourself all the time, but this kind of backs it up a little bit. You know, if the win probability is 30% and the guy's supposed to score 40% of the time, you absolutely should send him. If he gets thrown out, everybody goes, boo, I can't believe you sent him. But, you know, in trying to score the most runs and win a game, you know, over time, this has been the best time to send them. And that doesn't happen very often. It's kind of, you know, one of those things, but a lot of it comes down to, you know, the feel and knowing your runners. But I think as far as in the coach's room, there's not a lot of pressure. I mean, it's a lot of preparation. Nobody realizes what goes into it. I mean, guys get there between 11 and probably 12:30 every day and prepare for a 7:05 game. Luckily now, there's so many ways to get our information. iPad, laptop, everything's portable, Google Drive, all that stuff. So, I mean, I can grab a scouting report sitting right here off my phone if I want. So I can do my work anywhere. A lot of guys like to still do it at the ballpark. You can sit in the coffee shop when you're on the road or wherever and do it. I can go sit in the bullpen. We were in Colorado last week. It was a beautiful day. I went and sat in those that forest they got in center field there. I took my iPad out there and did some video work and all that and sat out there. So you can do it. You don't have to be stuck in a room somewhere underneath.
That's cool.
So speaking of some of your responsibilities, what's your like in season day-to-day, not duties but responsibilities in season?
So I'm in charge of the catchers. I have two guys that work underneath me. One guy's a receiving coach, Craig Driver. He was an assistant coach at Yale. Played out in Washington as a player and ended up being an assistant coach at Yale. And another guy, Bob Stumpo, that's in charge of kind of game planning and stuff like that, more of the blocking and stuff like that, throwing a little bit. I kind of oversee both of them, make sure we're on the same page. So what will happen every day is Bob will take whoever's catching that day, game plan with him, go over all the stuff, advanced stuff with him. And then Craig Driver, our receiving guy, does all the receiving work. We do it off a machine and stuff on a daily basis. So I'll just oversee that, make sure everything's going. I'll get a report back from them, see how that's going. I'll do my research on the opposing team's outfielders for the third base coaching, figure out that situation. A lot of it has to do with talking to players, too. How do you feel? I mean, a guy might not be on the report, but he might have a tight hamstring, so you want to talk to guys as the day goes on, make sure everybody's okay. So you know if you can send a guy or if not, because a lot of guys are playing through things, especially when you get in the middle of the season. So I'll do all that. And then on the physical side of it, throwing BP, hitting fungos, things like that, interacting with players, a lot of communication between the players and myself just to make sure everybody's okay. Kind of like I did as a manager in the minor leagues, where you want to kind of try to touch most guys every day somehow, talk to them, make sure everybody's doing all right, because it's a grind. But yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't have to write reports anymore like I used to after the game. Once the game's over, a lot of times there's things to look at. Like I said, you know, the postmortem on the throwing or on the base running side of it. Then we have a postmortem on the catching side of it. We have the receiving stats and all that, which Craig goes through and does a nice job of putting together a kind of a postmortem for the catchers, what they scored every night and what we could have done better, attaches some video with it. It sends it out to some front office people and things, and then we usually end up getting together and talking about what we can do better tomorrow, especially the catching side of it, and figure out from there.
You see the younger players gravitating more to this information, like they want this data, or is it sometimes annoying to them, like this is overload?
They don't get to see the data a lot of times. I mean, certain guys will ask for the data. Like for instance, we have two guys. We have Jorge Alfaro, who's basically our starting catcher, who I think is going to be an all-star one day, and we have Andrew Knapp. Andrew went to Cal. Jorge's from Columbia, signed at 16 years old. So Andrew is more the analytical mind, and we went to Cal. I mean, great university. So he likes to see his number. He likes to see where he scored. He likes to see how he can do better. Where Jorge, he doesn't really care how he scored. He asked, "Did I do good?" And you tell him if you did well or not. And then from there, we kind of talk to him, oh, this is where we could have done better. If we had trouble on a certain pitch, we'll go work on that pitch, and this is how we can catch it better tonight. And that's how he is. So every guy is a little bit different. So I think that's kind of the fine line of trying to figure out how much data does this guy want, how much does he want. Because if you give too much to certain guys, it's just going to blow their mind.
How's your Spanish, man?
Bueno.
Outstanding. Well, Dusty, we appreciate that. November 9th is our gala, our home plate gala. You've been there every year. You've been a great supporter. You've donated memorabilia, obviously brought people to it. We're looking at 250 to 300 people this year in the big room. It's a good time. Obviously Schilt is getting the Spirit of the Game award this year. Pretty interesting story in Major League Baseball. My college teammate, Mark Chiardi, it's a movie producer, actually pitched in the big leagues a little bit with Milwaukee, and is going to be there. Big night. We still have tickets available. I got to say this every time. This is not a night that is just for CBC families or, people involved in our organization. This is a baseball night, and, we ask everybody, put your swords down and come out and, get around a level of baseball from top to bottom. And invert it if you want, because, the bottom is just as important to us. It's our top at times than just all the big league guys that'll be in there. But Andrew and I thank you for taking the time and coming over here. We get to hang out this weekend. You're coming down to Greenville with us.
I'm gonna be the bench coach this week.
You got to control my son. I'll control yours. How's that?
Okay. We both got our hands full.
Yeah, we're done. So I appreciate it, Andrew. Another great show, we appreciate everybody listening to the Schaefer Baseball Report on Podbean, and we'll see what we bring you next week. Peace out.